Hi, I'm Edwin Rutch, Director of the Center for Building a Culture of Empathy, and welcome to our Empathy Circle, which was supposed to be an empathy circle with the political left and the political right, but the right didn't show up on this. We had two conservatives who were supposed to be here, and they didn't show up. So we're going to have to go ahead with this Empathy Circle anyway. And we're going to change the topic somewhat, and hopefully we'll be able to connect with the people who didn't show up at another point in time. So our initial idea was to address the growing polarization that's happening in the country. And we've been doing that with our empathy tent, which is going out to different left-right conflicts that have been happening around the country. Here in California, we went to Berkeley and to Los Angeles and Sacramento. And we've been trying to bring the left and the right together to have dialogues using empathic listening or empathy circle process. So what we want to do in this circle is we're going to change the topic a little bit. We're first going to have introductions. So we'll each introduce ourselves. I'll introduce how to take part in an empathy circle, just what the rules are and the process, and then we'll have a dialogue for about for about 60 minutes. So as I said, I'm Edwin Rutch, Director of the Center for Building a Culture of Empathy, and been working on how to foster more empathy for about the past 10 years. And I've been doing hundreds of interviews, have a whole website, cultureofempathy.com, around this topic. And so that's me. Perhaps we can go around, and maybe I see Shannon just dropped out. So maybe his connection had some problems, but there he is, he's back. So Karen, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. My name is Karen Tamarius, and I am the founder of SMART, which is a civil discourse organization for progressives. We basically help progressives engage in radical civility with conservatives.
Okay, and Jessica?
Sure. So I'm Jessica. I'm a tutor in San Diego. Until this past election, as sort of a lazy liberal, standard run-of-the-mill, not very involved in politics liberal. And like many people, I was very surprised by Trump's election. And so I've gotten a little more involved in things. And one of the things I've gotten involved with is working with Karen with SMART.
Great, thanks. And Shannon?
I'm Shannon. I'm an LA native and a student in San Francisco, and I organize around the state of California as an activist and an organizer.
And we were with the Empathy Tent in Los Angeles, and we did some mediations there, and you took part in one of those left-right mediations. So thank you everyone for being here. So I want to give a little introduction of how we do an empathy circle. And at the core of it is empathic listening. So in this process, one person will speak, and they will speak to someone else in the group. And you can speak and share anything you would like, and the person that's the listener will reflect back their understanding of what you are saying as the speaker. And so as a speaker, you want to be sure and pause periodically to give the listener a chance to reflect back. And as a listener, you're just reflecting your understanding to the satisfaction of the speaker. So the idea is for the speaker to feel like they've been heard and understood. And then we're going to have a 5-minute time limit, just so so the conversation doesn't go on and on. So you can, once you feel heard to your satisfaction, you can say, "I feel fully heard," and then it'll be the turn of the listener to speak and select someone to speak to, and we'll just go around like that for the time allotted, which is an hour. And then so that's the basic process. I know that Karen and Jessica, you've done this already, so you're familiar with the process. So and we just did a little bit of an in-service beforehand, so we'll just jump right into it. And we're changing our topic to talk about how can progressives deal with the divisions within our ranks. Because there's a lot of conflict among progressives, and so we want to talk about that. So we can just jump right into this, and if anybody wants to begin the conversation and select this person you want to speak to, and I'll do the timekeeping for 5 minutes. And we're ready to just jump right in.
I'm happy to start if that's all right.
Okay.
And sorry, is it Shannon? Am I saying your name right?
You pronounced it perfectly right there. Or you can call me
Shannon.
Yeah, or you can call me Shane. That's totally cool also if it's easier for everyone.
Shane. Okay, perfect. I'll switch to Shane in the middle when I forget how to say your real name. I'll talk to you if I could. So one thing I'm curious about, and I should probably open by saying I think I'm less politically informed than most people who care enough to do an empathy circle. So I'm not super knowledgeable about politics. But one thing in general that I'm curious about as far as divisions in the progressive world are kind of the Bernie or busters. I don't know whether they're right that the Democratic Party is horribly corrupt and Hillary Clinton is evil or not. But I'm also sort of mad at them for the current. He's gone.
Oh no!
Sorry, you disappeared. Do you want to sort of tell me what you heard, and then I'll start wherever I need to.
You were pronouncing my name. The last thing I heard.
Oh.
Oh no!
Okay, so second chance to be way more succinct. So one thing I'm curious about in the progressive world is sort of the Bernie or busters. I'm wondering how right they are, and I just don't know that much about the Democratic Party. It was just very clearly, Hillary Clinton was very clearly the lesser of two evils for me. So I'm really curious about that world and to understand it better.
I was organizing with Bernie back in like 2015 and really kind of saw the spark of that going on, and I was really inspired by it, but I wasn't a part of the whole Bernie or bust thing just because I saw the imminent threat that Trump posed, and I definitely get where people were going with that, where they wanted like, oh, we're going to stick by this guy because he's got a lot of good ideas, and if we hold tight to that, something should come out of it. But I've also was kind of just at we have to cut our losses wherever possible because the damage.
Okay, if I could just interrupt. So, well, within this process, you're just going to reflect back your understanding of what Jessica said, just about her not knowing about the understanding the dynamics of the Bernie and bust.
All right, my bad.
No worries.
It takes a little bit of a learning process. So.
But yeah, the whole thing behind Bernie or bust was people trying to stick tight to Bernie and trying to like draw a firm line right there.
Right. So I guess so this process I think makes more sense when people are like really disagreeing. But so yeah, basically like you just repeat what I say, and then like in a little bit you would talk, and then you could talk to either me or Karen and like say all that stuff. Does that make sense? Okay. But yeah, clearly you heard me. That's a relevant, appropriate response. So, okay, total fail at stirring up division and controversy. We all agree again. What divisions do I see in the progressive world? I guess one thing is like, so I'm very solidly left of center, but maybe not as left as some people. So I think like I don't always know how to handle those situations. So like sometimes I think something well, let me go with a safer subject. So immigration. Dating a border patrol agent. I think he's a good guy and he's honest and he doesn't use excessive force and that sort of thing. And I think seeing that from the inside, I'm a little more so left of center, but not nearly as left as some people. So I guess I don't know. I noticed that I shy away from expressing my moderate opinions because I'm afraid of other liberals. So that's one thing I noticed, I guess. So now you just simplify what I said.
Yeah, I can definitely get where you're coming from on that, just because I noticed there's kind of two groups of people. There's the ones who like to bark down their superiority and their like craziness of their beliefs to prove a point. And
okay, wait, pause. So you've understood me completely, but we're practicing a skill, because when we're talking to conservatives, we're going to get angry and want to yell back and not like repeat what they said. So just echo me.
Okay. So you're kind of feeling that it's hard to voice your opinion amongst other progressives and people on the left because they try to show how radical and how progressive they are by shunning you down.
Yeah, thanks. I feel fully heard. I think I'm good.
Okay. Then it's your turn to speak. Shane? So you can select one of us to speak to, and we'll do the same. We're reflecting back our understanding of what you said.
I think he might have frozen again.
Yeah.
It must be like processor heavy, because I was having the same thing on my laptop. It seems to be better now that I've switched to the Mac Mini, but I was getting lagging in the booting. I think because it's recording, it just takes a lot of computer resources or something.
Yeah, usually it records pretty okay. So it could be, he did mention the last time we were in a call, he said that his roommates do a lot of gaming.
They're stealing the internet.
Yeah, so it could be the gaming. So anyway, so you can select your back.
Yeah, so you just want to speak to where I'm coming from, or?
Yeah, if you want to speak to one of us, and then we're going to reflect back our understanding of what you were saying.
And you can say whatever you want.
Yeah, say anything you want, whatever is up for you.
Jessica, like I can kind of understand where you're coming from, because I get hit with a whole like laundry list of labels. People call me socialist, anarchist, communist, just leftist, and a wide range of stuff, when pretty much I got into organizing as an environmental activist and got more into sort of workers' rights and pro-union stuff. But I'm pretty much, my views are just, I'm pro-people and pro-environment, and because I'm willing to speak out for those things, I get hit with this long list of crazy labels and ideologies that, yeah, there's points and to all those that I see, like there's a good point in each of those and there's a bad point in each of those, but it's more so I get hit with labels rather than people asking me how I actually feel about stuff.
Okay, it sounds like you're speaking back to Jessica, so if you'd like to reflect back at what you were hearing, we can.
Yeah, so I'm hearing that you really identify as an environmentalist and a pro-union guy and a workers' rights guy, and you notice that people sort of want to put you in this box as a leftist, where you're an anarchist and you're a communist and you're a socialist, and nobody really asked you if you were those things or saw evidence that you were those things, but just sort of, you're a leftist, so let's put you in this box.
Yeah, I feel heard.
Is there more? You can go on. You've still got 3.5 minutes.
Fascinating to me, the labels people put on me, because I do a lot of digging into the philosophy and just sort of mentality behind different ideologies, so I can learn and so I can take the good from it, but also see the bad, so I can have a decent conversation when people use those labels, or have a nice conversation with the people who actually identify as that. And it's interesting to me how people nowadays are very quick to throw labels at each other, regardless of what side of this political spectrum they're on, rather than get down and actually talk about the issues underlying the social friction and underlying sort of the conflict between groups.
Right. So you're sort of it's important to you to be not necessarily a moderate, but to think about things before you ascribe a certain label to yourself. So if someone asks you how you feel about communism, you'd probably have something to say that was good and something to say that was bad. And so you're really like wanting people, I think, to acknowledge some nuance and let you agree with parts and disagree with parts and agree with one thing and disagree with another thing, rather than this kind of intellectual laziness of you're leftists, all leftists believe this and they're wrong or right.
Yeah, and personally, like, I do realize that I tend to lean in sort of a more radical sphere of the spectrum, but it's also grounded in a lot of me having read a lot and, you know, seen different ideologies play out and trying to acknowledge the good and the bad in both, and just more of in that radical sort of sense that that's where a lot of the philosophy that I feel that change genuinely comes from lies.
Can you say that very last part again?
It's like, it's not that I consider myself radical, it's just that philosophy and a lot of the just points where I feel like that we can capitalize on and really strive for change or strive to have these deep conversations about society and about the system lie in these radical dialogues and in the conversations that radical leaders in the past have had and had to come to terms with.
Okay, so it sounds like you're expressing that although some of your viewpoints are radical, you arrived at those through a lot of reading and a lot of thought, and so it wasn't for you this I want to be different, I want to be wild, I want to be on the edge, I want attention kind of a thing. It was what changes do I want to see in the world, what has worked, what has not worked, and so you thought it through a lot, and you'd like for people to acknowledge that and sort of listen to your reasons and have a better conversation. He might be gone again.
So we could transition. It seemed it's a time for, if you want to select one of us to speak to.
Sure. I'm trying to think of something else to say. So I'll speak to Edwin.
Okay.
So
we're moving on.
I'm trying to branch out because I feel like I'm so comfortable.
I kind of broke up at the end there, but you sound like you were going a good.
Thank you for your faith. So I'll talk to you, Edwin. I'm gonna try to branch out more this time and sort of talk to everybody. So I guess one thing I think about often is that we all need to get better at disagreeing with people we agree with. So I feel like a horrible monster if I say, actually, I think the liberal standard view got it wrong on this police killing. I think this was a justified shooting. I have no idea how to say that without seeming like a total jerk. So I think one thing I hope for, like within the liberal community space, is that we disagree kindly, but like way more often than we currently do.
Mm-hmm. So what I'm hearing there is that within the liberal sphere, you would like us to actually disagree more often with each other, but in a kinder way. So exactly. not just kind of conform to some way or avoid conflict, but to disagree and then do it in a kinder way.
Right, and I think I understand why that's so difficult, because I think especially with this last election, our political tribe is something we're really deeply emotionally invested in. And so I think I feel almost this visceral fear when I'm afraid that somebody's about to call me a racist or call me a hypocrite or whatever. And so I understand why disagreeing with other liberals is so hard, but I think it's incredibly important, because I think going along with something you don't really agree with is the first step in this snowball that leads to polarization.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it gives the other side fodder to say, like, look at this insane thing all these people are willing to agree on, and both sides do that.
So there's what I was hearing, there's actually, if you want to disagree with someone, that there's a fear of how you'll be portrayed or judged, and that that creates a, from the other side, that they will actually criticize that sort of conformity or that fear. I don't know if I'm quite getting it right here, but that's actually, you know, people should be able to speak up about what their truth is. And maybe I'm adding that, but that's what I was kind of understanding.
Right. And so to use the example of police killings, it's a super hot button issue. So I think, like, you know, it's hard not to hurt people in an issue like that. So it's very hard to say, like, I believe racial bias is real. I believe, you know, police need implicit bias training. I believe that some of these things that are happening are just totally horrifying. But I believe there's another side to the story. And I think so in a situation like that, right? So if there's a police killing that I say, I think that police officer had a reason that people aren't seeing, you know, sometimes I watch, like, if there's a video, I watch it with my boyfriend and he points something out that I missed. And so in situations like that, if I go along with it, then the whole left wing, sort of, at least from the right wing's perspective, the whole left wing is going against the police and wants to take away police officers' right to defend themselves, and wants to put the lives of criminals over the lives of police officers. And that certainly isn't what I believe. So it's like, it's incredibly emotionally difficult for me to say, I think this police officer was justified. I think the media got it wrong. I hate it. It feels like visceral fear, and sort of like I'm attacking the minority community, and I feel bad about it. But I also feel like if I just sort of jump on the bandwagon to avoid feeling bad or looking stupid or having people be mad at me, then it deepens the polarization. So
I see.
So that's because then the right wing looks at us and goes, see, they're unreasonable. All of them, they agree on this. They have no grounding in reality. So in situations like that, for example, I think it's really important for people on the left to try very hard to speak their truth, even if it's a really uncomfortable discussion.
So in a situation like a police shooting, that you can see two sides of of what's happening, but you're feeling fear about speaking about the full experience that you have, and that's out of fear. But then you're saying that by this happening on the left, it's without this dialogue and this openness on the left, it gives the right a criticism of the left, saying, look, you're all just doing this one way of thinking, and so that by having this these discussions or this openness or on the left, it actually removes that criticism, and that criticism also creates a polarization. So by being more open on the left, that it would create less polarization, because then people can't polarize with you're all the left or this way. So.
Right. Thank you. I feel fully heard.
Okay. Then I'll speak to Karen. And yeah, so there's I feel some real frustrations, but I'm even feeling in terms of leaving. It's not saying I'm in the left, that there's a left and the right, and then there's the empathy movement. So I actually created a website, a thing called the Empathy Party. So it would be, take that it's the empathic approach, so because I just haven't felt a lot of support within the left for empathy. There's a lot of like sort of superficial talk, but I'm not seeing kind of a real support for it.
So for you, the divisions that are most important right now are the lack of support for empathy. And so in some ways that's made you want to just move away from the left and create your own group of people who support empathy primarily and not worry about the right-left division.
Yeah, or even, yeah, exactly. Then even within the left, because there is so much frustration, you know, in terms of getting support for the left. I've been seeing more and more programs, you know, kind of interviews and just in the empathic dialogues we've having, it's kind of like opening sort of my understanding better. And it's for me, it seems like when we're criticizing each other, in a sense, we're criticizing each other for not having empathy, in a sense, right? It's like we point even within the left, everyone points to the lack of empathy on the other side. And then the left are doing that, and then the left and right are doing that as well. So our criticisms are actually, in a sense, they're kind of accurate they're all accurate in some way. If that makes, yeah, maybe just get a reflection to help me understand that myself.
Part of the division between the right and left is grounded in the belief of people on the left that the people on the right lack empathy. But ironically, they're also one of the major things that's driving conflict on the left is a failure of empathy as well. So people with varying perspectives within, say, the Democratic Party can't empathize with each other.
Yeah.
On key issues.
Yeah, so there's a lack of empathy within the Democrats or the progressives as well. And so when we criticize each other, we're sort of like criticizing each other's lack of empathy. And the idea is we criticize each other's lack of empathy, and somehow magically through sort of pain, we're kind of whip each other, and through pain, we'll steer each other in the right direction. It just doesn't seem to work.
Isn't that sort of like...
So you hope that, so Democrats and progressives hope that all of this whipping each other is going to produce a good result, but actually it's useless and painful.
Yeah, so somehow it seems like the means have to be the end. So you have to use empathic means. And I don't always either, because I get so frustrated. You know, I can lash out. But it does seem that if, you know, through this mutual listening and having some, you know, structures that help support that, that's where my hope is.
So a major place that we might find some solution to this problem is through empathy and listening to each other and mending some of those wounds.
Yeah, and valuing those that having that as a value. So that's my hope, and I see it working when it's not easy. It's, you know, there's a lot of work to do, but when it works, it works. And I just see that it's like, you know, it's like progressives, you know, even progressive couples, they get at each other's throats and they argue, and they got to go into therapy or, you know, or counseling as well. So it really works for every situation.
Empathy is extremely useful in a variety of conflicts, and progressives should value it more and use it more to resolve these
divisions.
Works. It works, yes.
Yeah, I feel heard. Thank you.
Okay, I will talk with Shannon. And Shannon, hey. So I raised this topic because it's been a challenge for me personally since I started SMART. And I was pretty naive, I think, when I started the organization. I thought that bringing progressives together would be, you'd have all of these people who are on the same page, and we would be able to get work done. And to some extent, that's been true. But one of the things that has really surprised me, I think, is how much energy is spent on tearing each other down or criticizing each other rather than trying to find solutions. And it's been pretty disheartening for me to see that. And now that I've experienced that myself, I've started to look around and I've realized, oh, it's not just me, it's not just my organization. This seems to be happening all over the place, this infighting.
Yeah, I can definitely hear where you're coming from. Just you can bring a lot of people who on the surface may seem like they have a lot in common and are on the same page, but then it leads to a lot of people trying to one-up each other on views. Or people want to have these little disagreements to prove minor points and get distracted from the bigger picture. Is that what you're kind of going for?
Yeah. And I think one of the things that's hard too is that I guess that I found personally challenging and emotionally challenging is this feeling that I'm constantly having my motives questioned. So, like, am I working for the greater good, or am I just trying to promote white privilege? Or am I really fighting for social justice, or am I secretly just trying to promote myself? And that's been really emotionally challenging.
Yeah, and I've definitely been in that position where people are like, you're white, what are you doing in this space? What do you care about these issues for when you're not as affected by them as other people, as communities of color? And it's definitely can feel a little challenging to operate in that kind of sphere where your motives for being present, for giving a care or a crap about the situation that is going on. And it's kind of a uncomfortable position to be in, but it's also something to reflect on for yourself and for myself. I've seen it as. Is that what you're?
Yeah, and I definitely spend a lot of time reflecting on the difficulties I've had and meditating on it, and but there's also a lot of second guessing that goes on, and one of the things I've struggled with is figuring out when do I or how much time do I dedicate to this kind of self-reflection and second guessing, and how much time do I oh, you're gone. I think he's gone.
I can jump in and reflect if that's okay.
Okay, let me finish the line, which is so I'm torn between the energy recognizing that I have a limited amount of energy, a limited amount of time. I'm torn between how much energy and time am I going to put in to trying to make sure I do things perfectly, and how much time I'm going to put into just getting the work done that I know needs to get done, and recognizing that I'm going to make mistakes along the way.
So with some of this kind of internal criticism and people questioning your motives and things, you find yourself reflecting quite a bit, second guessing yourself, making sure you're doing things right. But you also recognize that time and energy are finite, and that when you spend time sort of with the infighting issues or second guessing yourself or reflecting, that it's taken away from the time and energy you have. Spread your message of civil discourse and get the work done that you set out to do in the first place.
Yes, I feel heard.
Where do we go from here, Edwin?
We could, Shane, if you'd like to pick up again, since it would be your turn. Since
I definitely understand where you're coming from.
And who are you speaking to? You select someone to speak to, and they'll reflect back.
Karen. I'm speaking to Karen.
Okay.
I definitely understand where you're coming from. As as someone who organizes in just different communities, and being someone who's white as all hell, I definitely have gotten questioned by my peers, by people I organize with. What are you doing here? You're just a white boy from the suburbs. And sort of like that's caused me just the roots of what I'm doing here and what I believe in. And for me, it's always come down to, as seeing that a lot of white privilege and a lot of patriarchy, some of the societal problems we're in, for me, it's like, as a white male, I feel it's important for me to keep my own other white males in check and to stand out against when I feel things are being done wrong or inhumane or things are becoming a bit oppressive. And I have also realized that one of my roles in the movement and in these sort of circles is, whenever I'm at actions, cops are less likely to come after me being a white male than they are a female or person of color who's in the same position. And so it's also just me giving a shit about what's going on. And I feel that if, as a citizen who recognizes the problems happening in society and understands them, it's my duty to be present, to speak out, to be in these circles, and to assist and participate however I can. Even if that's not me leading, me participating and me assisting other people who are trying to continue this resistance is important. And I've definitely been in spaces where I just didn't speak because they wanted only people of color or community members to. And I definitely understood and can empathize with that. And I've definitely felt at times where it's like, oh, maybe I shouldn't participate in this. Maybe I'm not needed. But at the same time, I always have this thing where it's like, if I don't participate, if I don't speak out, and if I'm not physically present to stand against something, then what is the reason for anyone else to? And I still get asked that question a lot of times of what am I doing here? But that's just made me brush up on my philosophy of what I believe in, not only politically, but socially and personally, and about my place in society. And it's not an easy question to answer, and sometimes it can feel a little discouraging, but also it's understandable why people would be asking an outsider or someone those questions, because they want to make sure that everyone who's there has good intentions, is of the right mindset, isn't trying to hijack the space, or isn't trying to commandeer. And that's why I realized it's not always my role to maybe lead or to take charge, but just to be present and to assist however possible.
All right. So I think what you're saying is that you get asked a lot too, what you're doing there as a white male with significant privilege. What's your place in the resistance? And you think that's a legitimate question, and you've spent a lot of time thinking it through, trying to figure out for yourself how to answer that question. And for you, there are a lot of reasons why you continue to be involved. And one of those is you feel you have a responsibility as a white man to play some role kind of reining in the effects of other white males. You also feel like you have a responsibility as a citizen to fight for social justice. And you also feel like you can play a certain role in just by being present at these events, for example, at protecting people who are more vulnerable from the police, for example. And even though you've kind of figured this out for yourself, and it is painful to be challenged, you think it's important for those questions to be asked to make sure that people aren't getting involved for the wrong reasons and that they aren't trying to hijack the movement. And so you've overall, I'd say, kind of come to terms with it.
Yeah, I feel heard.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, so I guess it's my turn. I'm kind of reflecting. I'll talk to Jessica. Jessica, I'm reflecting a bit on the extent to which I've come to terms with things, and I think I'm definitely more resilient than I was in the beginning. I think I was kind of just. I think I was surprised, and initially and emotionally unprepared for some of the challenges I was getting, and now I've kind of reached a point where I expect them, and I've also spent enough time reflecting on what I believe and evaluating my beliefs over and over again, that to be confident in them in a way I wasn't in the beginning, and so I feel better about standing behind them, and so it's getting better. Although I certainly wouldn't say that questions and attacks don't bother me.
So it sounds like at first you felt sort of blindsided by the fact that anyone would question your motives or, significantly disagree with whether you were on the right team, question whether you were on the right team. And at first it was really surprising and really difficult. And you've developed a little bit of a thicker skin about it. So while it's not easy, you're secure in yourself that you're doing what you're doing for the right reasons, and you're secure in your own beliefs, and so that helps someone.
Yes. That said, one of the things I find really interesting is that when I get into a conflict with a progressive person, I find it much more difficult than getting into a conflict with a conservative person. And I'm getting better at that too, but it still is harder for me. And I'm constantly trying to get better at that and find ways, try to figure out like why it's happening, what I'm doing differently in my and the way I engage. And anyway, it's an ongoing challenge.
So you still, it definitely affects you more emotionally when you're having a conflict with a fellow progressive, because you sort of expect it with a conservative, where with a progressive, it's more feels more personal or feels more painful. And so you're constantly trying to get braver about having those conflicts and feeling okay when you're having those conflicts, while also trying to avoid them when and if it makes sense to try to avoid them.
Yeah, yeah, I agree with that. And I think you said that one of the reasons is because I don't expect the disagreement. But I think one of the other reasons is actually when I have a disagreement with conservatives, it usually doesn't become personal. It stays at the level, like the conservative might make a lot of personal attacks on the politicians I support, or various policies, but they don't usually attack me personally. Whereas I find when I get into a conflict with someone who's progressive, the conversation immediately turns personal with questions about my motives, accusations, racism, and I think that's one of the things that makes it harder.
So you're feeling like you are, and probably all of us are, a lot more comfortable having a conversation or a disagreement that is more out of yourself. And so you find conservatives maybe stick to the issues. So they might debate a policy, or they might debate a politician, or they might attack a politician. But when you're disagreeing with a progressive, there's this kind of character attack or questioning of your motives that feels really personal and painful, and doesn't usually happen with conservatives.
Yep, I feel heard.
So I want to talk to Karen. So I'm glad that you are secure in your motives. I am also secure in your motives. So let me just say again, you're doing the right thing, and you're doing it. I really understand the surprise at the amount of negative interaction it takes to get anything done politically. I think I was naive too, and I thought like it would just be this great, generative, creative, fulfilling process all the time. And sometimes it is. But there's also a lot of like people automatically assuming you're a jerk because you're an admin in a group. And some really genuinely bad behavior that you have to deal with. And I really, I didn't expect it either.
So, what you feel that you have faith in me. You don't question my motives, which I'll just have as an aside say is really nice to hear. I know I'm not supposed to judge, but that's nice. And you too were surprised when you got involved in politics that there was so much, I guess, animosity and interpersonal challenges. You didn't expect it and thought we would be able to work together as a team more easily. And so this is something you deal with too.
Right. And so we talked a lot at the beginning of the call about how we need more disagreement, and now we're kind of talking about how we need less disagreement. So I guess I think good disagreement, like you were saying, is disagreeing about issues in sort of a kind, calm way that doesn't question someone's motives, character, and honesty. And it's been coming up a lot in the group this week, like, when can you or should you be civil, and when can you not? And I think, like, if you think someone's truly bad, that's when you block and you stop and you fight, and that's when civility is kind of pointless. But if you think someone's good underneath, which I think the overwhelming majority of people are, then you approach these conversations with respect and with the thought that you don't know everything, and that both of you can learn and people can change their minds, and that when people do bad things, it's usually not because they're evil.
So one of the things, I guess your personal philosophy is that most people aren't bad, even though they may do bad things, and it makes sense to approach them with civility in order to increase the chance that they can change their mind, and that you can find out who they are for real underneath, rather than just judging them on the basis of their political beliefs.
Right, and civility I believe to be effective, but I also believe to be like right. Like the way that I feel if I've had a really hard-hitting, difficult conversation, but I've been honest and fair about it, is very different from how I feel if I just did something. So civility is effective. I believe it's like emotionally correct most of the time.
So you broke up there. So I can't reflect.
Okay. So just, yeah, so I think civility is effective, and I also think it's usually the right thing to do aside from being effective. Because I think, if you really blow up at someone, or you curse, or you attack their character, you feel bad later. If you have an honest, forthright conversation, even if it's really difficult, even if the subject matter is really difficult and really awkward, I think you feel better. So, like, some people's definition of civility is being nice all the time. Mine is just like not pretending to know things you don't know, giving people the benefit of the doubt, assuming, misunderstanding or bad information rather than dishonesty or bad motives, for as long as you can, as often as you can. So I think it's good sort of for me psychologically, in addition to being, I think, usually effective.
So you think civility is effective, but you also like it because it's better emotionally. If you blow up at somebody and have an argument, you don't come away with a good sense of what transpired. It's kind of traumatic, and you don't have a sense of having actually accomplished anything. And for you, civility is mostly about, I guess, having an open mind and being humble, and admitting that you don't know everything, and that is not what most people think, which is most people tend to think of it as just being nice all the time, and for you, that's not what your interactions are like.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, we have a new friend.
Yeah. Hey, Wani. Hi, Wani.
Hi, Wani.
Hey, can you hear me?
Yeah, we hear you.
Oh, sorry, I wasn't here the last hour. I thought I was able to just watch. But,
Oh yeah. So I got your message. The environment there wasn't conducive to taking part, and
yeah, I couldn't get the alone time necessary until now, an hour later. Very, very sorry.
I have time still if you're interested in staying. Do other people?
Okay.
Yeah, I do.
Okay.
Whatever topic you're on, go ahead and continue. I thought it was the way to just observe, but well, yeah.
Do you want to listen for a bit and kind of
Sure.
like get the process, and then maybe like if you feel ready, maybe participate?
That'd be good. I'd
Okay.
appreciate that.
Oh, great.
I had just finished talking to Karen, so I think it's Karen.
Yeah. So it's my turn. I'll talk to Shannon. Give me a minute to to gather my thoughts again. So I think this, as I said, I run a civil discourse organization, and what we promote is radical civility for progressives. And one of the things that often comes up in our organization, and we're struggling with right now, is, and this is one of the things Jessica said, is that this question of, are there times when civility is inappropriate, when you're dealing with the situation where someone's behavior is so bad that responding to them in a civil manner gives the impression that you condone their behavior, or that it gives them too much room and too much space to promulgate their views and get out there and this comes down, for example, often with white supremacists. Should we engage in civil discourse with white supremacists if that means we're actually listening to what they have to say? Where I usually come down on that is on the side of civility. I have a really hard time imagining any situation where civility can't make the situation better. But because I believe that, I am accused of being racist and having exercising white privilege on a regular basis.
So what you're saying is, by trying to be civil and have a dialogue with people who are white supremacists or have that kind of hatred and disregard for other people in their mentality and in their words, you want to hear them out and be civil and be like, no, we're not trying to shun you out. We're trying to listen to your side, but we're also trying to have a conversation about this. And I can definitely understand where you're coming from, is that you want to be civil and peaceful and reasonable, but you don't want to support them at the same time. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. So the challenge is that part of radical civility is being radical. Like, you go out and you have conversations even in circumstances where people's views are extreme. And but there is one of the huge divisions that results from that among progressives is this question of whether you're actually supporting the beliefs you disagree with by doing that.
It was sort of like, by being civil, you're supporting the other person's righteous and sort of extreme beliefs.
Right. And I think for me, I can totally understand that argument. I can see where people are coming from with that argument. And my response to that is usually, I want to engage in discussion about it. Let's explore this. I'm open to the possibility that I'm wrong. And I want to look at the evidence. What does the evidence show us about using civility versus not using civility? And one of the things I find that is frustrating is a lot of people don't want to engage in that dialogue. To them, it's just patently obvious that that civility is unacceptable in those situations, and so they don't even want to consider it.
Yeah, I definitely hear where you're coming from, and it's a tricky position to be in where you want to take the high road and avoid conflict, but you also want to have a serious conversation about the issue and address it.
Kind of. I don't actually value avoiding conflict. Like that to me, I have absolutely no problem having conflict. I expect to me, that's part of radical civility. You go out and you advocate your position, but you advocate your position and have conflict in a way that is completely respectful, is open to the possibility that you're wrong, values other perspectives, and demands that you actually listen to what the other side has to say.
Yeah. So you're trying to be radical and address the issue at the same time, not get into more of a conflict of words rather than physical.
Definitely, it's a conflict of words, not physical. It's also not. It's not a conflict in which we tear each other down personally. It's a conflict of ideas, rather than a conflict of individuals.
Mm-hmm. I see. Trying to piece together an appropriate response. So you want to have a serious debate about the issue without attacking each other personally. Yeah.
Exactly. I feel heard. Do you wanna take us? Want to go next?
I think he
Did we
froze.
lose Shannon again?
Yeah. So this might be a chance for Iwani, if you'd like to share, and you can select one of us to speak to, and we'll reflect back what we're hearing you say.
I'd like to introduce myself.
Oh yeah.
You see, my name is Iwani. I'm a Trump supporter. Let's see, I'm kind of similar. I watched the empathy chat that you had with the progressives. They had Jessica and Karen. I'm probably similar to Jessica. How in terms of
I'm back. Sorry.
oh hey, he's back. Shannon was in the middle of saying something like Brenda. Go ahead.
Can I continue, or do you want to finish?
Well, I was just introducing myself.
Yeah, if you'd like to finish that.
I remember Jessica saying something to the effect of she's been doing this for like a year or so, or I've been doing this for about a year and a half. I don't have any prior involvement in politics or anything like that, so it's been about a year and a half for me. I forgot what else I was going to say to emphasize that, but
well, maybe I can reflect back what we're hearing, or at least what I'm hearing. So your name is Iwani, and you're a Trump supporter, and you had watched the one of the progressive empathy circle that we did, and you were identifying with Jessica that, like her, you're new. You've been getting into the political this political field for about the last year and a half. So you feel like you're relatively new to it, like her.
That is correct. I feel heard. It's also I was going to say I'm not someone who would run for office or be a professional journalist. I'm basically I guess a basic level voter. I'm not a walking authority of knowledge, that kind of a thing.
Mhm.
And I don't mean that in a bad way to Jessica or anything. It's just,
No offense taken.
yeah, very similar to how she described herself in the All Progressives MVP chat that I saw on Edwin's YouTube channel.
So you're identifying with Jessica that like her, you haven't been in the working with politics for a long time. You're not like a political expert, or you're not identifying as a political expert or something like that.
Yeah.
But
So, some things trying to figure out what she said. I think she actually has more experience than I do because she's stated previous involvement in things. I think it was. I was supposed to watch it again to review, but I wasn't able to be here until now. But yeah, I guess these things will come about as I talk about topics. It'll be apparent.
So as you talk about topics, your understanding of them will become apparent, or your views. I didn't quite catch that.
Oh, what I meant was when I speak more about engaging in discussion, you'll get a better gauge of where I'm at.
Oh, okay. So what I hear you say is that as you engage more in the discussion, we'll get a better understanding of where you're coming from and what you're about.
I'm hoping.
You hope. You hope. You hope we understand you better as you share more of your thoughts.
Yeah. Yes.
Is there more that you'd like to say? You can.
I think I'm good for
your thoughts. Okay. So it was your turn, Shane.
Yeah, just going off of what Karen said, I definitely.
And who are you speaking to?
Speaking to Karen.
Okay.
Yeah, definitely. I can understand where you are coming from, because I kind of recognize when I'm talking to people who are white supremacists or extreme people on the right, that when I have a conversation with them, I try to figure out or try to gauge where they are. Like, is this someone who was just misinformed and was raised in a very different mindset and a different sphere of thought? Or is this someone who truly just actually hates people of color or hates certain communities? Because I recognize that racism is utilized as a tool of authoritarians and a tool of leaders and oppressors to turn the lower and middle classes against each other. And so I try to understand that, is this person just misinformed and hating people for the wrong reasons, or hating people because a leader or because someone else told them that this group of people is responsible for the problems? Or is it someone who genuinely hates black people or genuinely hates brown people? And I try to gauge it from there, because I try to have that understanding that people grow.
Oh, yes.
Frustrating.
Oh.
Throw in like 30 seconds of backstory. We were just talking about like sense to try to engage in civil discourse with like the KKK or these extreme sort of situations. So Karen started a civil discourse group that encourages like across the aisle political conversations. We've been talking about like, when should you try to engage in a civil discussion, and like when is it a waste of time? So that's where Shane's coming from.
I'm back. Pick up where I left off. But yeah, I try to just gauge, is this someone who is misinformed and is hating people for the wrong reasons, or hating them because a leader or because someone online told them this group of people, this minority, is responsible for the problem? Or is it someone who genuinely has hate inside of their hearts and wants to do harm? And if it's someone who's misinformed, I'll try to have that conversation and meet them where they're at and be like, hey, I know you understand things on this level and you believe this and that. Well, let's talk about it. Let's go through it. Let's try to have a dialogue. But if it's someone who genuinely hates people of color or hates groups, I will call them out and be like, hey, we're not going to tolerate this. If you mean harm to these people or to these communities, which I find solidarity with, that my friends and my family are a part of and live in, then I will call you out and let you know that, hey, this kind of thinking, this mentality is not going to be tolerated, and your words or actions of hate that you express will not be tolerated and will be responded to appropriately and accordingly. And it's sort of finding that fine line of, is the person just misinformed, or do they genuinely mean harm to certain minorities and certain communities? And I try to take the peaceful route and avoid conflict, but I also try to remain prepared that there are people out there who want to do harm to the community, to my friends and to their communities and to these other people that I organize with, and being prepared to confront that and to address it so that it doesn't slip under the rug or so that they don't slide through.
So it sounds like you engage in civil discourse with these extreme groups, and your goal when you do that is to kind of figure out why the person has the beliefs they do, and if they are coming from someplace that is a result of being misinformed or being raised in a particular environment, or perhaps having a great deal of social isolation, then you're much more likely to continue with civil discourse as an approach, because you think that has the potential to actually change minds. On the other hand, if what you discover is that the person is just hateful and doesn't seem to have any capacity for change, then your response is really to set boundaries and just let them know that what they are saying and advocating is unacceptable and you won't stand for it.
Yeah, and just drawing that line of like trying to come to an understanding of where they're at, but also enforcing boundaries so that my friends and so that the people I organize with can feel safe and not feel so vulnerable to hate, to extremist ideas, and yeah.
So one of the things that's important too is being conscious of who you're with. That for you as a white male, it's probably safer to engage in these ways, but you have to be aware of other people in the movement who are much more vulnerable to the viewpoints of extreme groups.
Exactly. Like if someone's shouting racial slurs or saying stuff that's offensive, it may not bother me as much personally, but I'm also aware of the people that are around me that may hear this and may have a different reaction and may feel uncomfortable being in the presence of that, and trying to acknowledge and address it so that people can continue to feel safe and to do what they care to do.
So it sounds like you prioritize safety to some extent over actual engagement.
No, I try to engage. I try to engage and have the discussions, but I also try to be aware of those.
Okay.
Should we move on?
Yeah, if you want to continue, want to speak, I think. Yeah.
Okay. I'll talk to our new member. I'm sorry, I've already forgotten your name.
Iwani.
Iwani. Okay. Iwani, welcome to the group.
Hi.
I guess what I'd just like to share is I'm really happy that you're here today joining us. Oh, you're back.
Yeah, we're just moving on. I think your time was up. So
yeah.
Unless.
Yeah. And just to close out, to go back to the conversation Karen and I had earlier, that's one thing where I feel my position is in organizing spaces is being able to address people like that and being able to ask of their intentions without feeling as threatened personally as other people. Yeah, I feel heard agreeing with me. Yeah.
Okay, thanks. So Iwani, I was just saying that I'm really glad you're here. And I also think it's really brave for you to be here because there are so many progressives in the group today.
Yeah, was supposed to be here. Sorry.
So we promise not to pick on you. But it's one of the, just so you know, I guess where I'm coming from is I started my group after the election because I was initially I was really confused about why Trump won. It just, I didn't know anybody who voted for Trump, and I live in Berkeley, which is, you know, one of the most liberal places in the country, and so it wasn't, I never got the perspective of Trump voters. And so after the election, one of the things I did was I just started talking with Trump voters online on Facebook, and also going out of my way to read books and articles and anything I could get my hands on to help me understand where people like you were coming from. And I feel like it really helped me and got me to a place where, even though I don't agree with most of the reasons people gave for why they voted for Trump, I understand them, and that's been helpful.
Okay. And should I repeat what you did?
If you want to reflect, yes.
Okay.
I'm gonna give it it was quite a bit, so but
Sorry.
do the best you can. Just it was quite a bit there.
From what I understand, Karen has gotten more involved after the election. She lives in Berkeley, very some would say a liberal area, and she's been, but she's been wanting to understand Trump voters and their perspective. I take it. I'm not sure she would use the word perspective, but basically she wants to understand their take on this. She started to communicate with some of them online, read some articles and things, and she has come to understand our side, how we feel and think about certain things, even though she doesn't disagree with all of it or any of it. And that's from what I understand she was saying.
Yeah, that's right. I feel heard. I'm gonna toss it to you.
Okay. Let's see. I'm not sure. Did this empathy circle start with a main topic?
We had switched the topic, was about our concerns or fears about the political situation, and we switched it actually to an in-group progressive discussion about our, about the conflicts within progressives. But you're free to talk about whatever is up for you and alive for you, whatever you feel energy about.
Throughout 2016.
And you just select who you want to speak to, so you can.
Let's see.
And they'll reflect back your.
Oh, gee. Let me see. I can go with either Karen or Shannon. There was use of the word supremacist.
If you just select which one, like specifically, just
I'll go with Shannon.
Okay.
And there's use of the word supremacist. Are these are you using that word for the more extreme in terms of your opponents, in terms of their behavior, or are you using that as an overall word for Trump supporters, which I'm sure is not the case, but some people will use the word supremacist not necessarily to label someone as an actual hate group, but in terms of at least what they're doing and believing in or supporting in terms of policies and voting and such. I was
Oh, I think he might have dropped out. Are you still there? Okay. Well, maybe I can reflect back what I'm hearing. So you're wondering what with Shannon is like, how is he using the word hate group or white supremacy? You're really wanting to understand what his definition is.
Yeah. It's
I'm back.
Oh, hey.
You were saying supremacists?
Yeah. I'm sure you're not saying all Trump supporters are supremacists, but I was wondering, I was not here for how that came about.
Yeah. We were just talking about how to address, Karen started speaking about how to address the more extreme people in Trump crowds, specifically the white supremacists and those who are there. And just from my personal attending of Trump rallies and seeing Trump supporters come out to counter protest other demonstrations, there is a significant contingent of white supremacists, of people in the Kekistan t-shirts and flaunting other aspects of white nationalism and white supremacy. That's significant, and that is one just call for concern. And we were discussing how to talk to those people, how to have a discussion, and what is the best way to address them.
Okay, to keep within our structure here, would you be willing to reflect back, Iwani, what you heard Shane say?
Yes, from what I understand, he's saying it's the more extreme people that he's met, and I take it people he's come across at protest events in Berkeley and in LA. I've met Shannon in person a couple of times in LA, and so
Buddy.
Yeah. Well, we are, and he's talking about the more white nationalists amongst the people who go to the Trump rallies on the Trump side.
Did you feel understood, Shane?
Yeah.
Okay. So just keeping within our form of speaking, getting a reflection, and then so now, yes, it's just trying to keep us on track here. So go ahead, Iwani. Sorry.
Oh, that was the question I was asking. Just, I was trying to see how we're using certain terms like supremacist versus just Trump voter. I got the answer.
Okay, so you feel heard?
I do.
Okay. Is there more that you'd like to say, or?
I'm okay for now.
Okay. Then Shane, it's your turn. But we've gone for about an hour and a half now. I don't know. That's always going to be about our time, 90 minutes we had for this. So I just wonder how everybody is on time. Don't want to.
I'm happy to keep going if other people are. Might be nice to get another half hour or something if people are willing.
I can do another half hour.
I can do another half hour.
I can. Okay, great. So yeah, we got.
So, me or
yeah, you.
Yeah, just we were discussing that aspect because I know there's a wide range.
And who are you speaking to?
Edawani.
Okay.
Yeah, I have noticed there's a range of Trump supporters who support for different reasons and have their own personal reasons for coming out and supporting. But what Karen and I were discussing was specifically the more just extreme white nationalist aspect of the Trump crowd, the ones that pose somewhat of a threat to the people we organize or are around with, and that we kind of are trying to figure out how is the best way to deal with and to approach them.
Okay. Yeah. There are certain individuals who are involved in Trump events, whether it's in LA or Berkeley and Portland, other places like New Orleans. There are certain individuals on the Trump side who have this sort of overly aggressive personality and verbal behavior. There's a lot of, I guess, that sort of tough talk, that kind of challenging talk that they do. I've seen videos of it. I don't like that sort of thing. When I go to events, I like to show up, hold a sign, and then go home. Just kind of keep it simple like that. In terms of talking, I like it when it's nicer talk. Just and I try not to. When I get into a discussion, some people will get into a discussion really serious, but at a protest event, it's hard to get much out of a discussion. It's really a demonstration event. So I've come to a point where if I'm discussing with someone and I didn't get all the points in that I wanted to, I'm not going to follow the person to try to get it out. It's just one encounter out of many. If it ends up, then I'll just go on to other people to talk to. I just kind of keep it mellow, kind of like that. Just it's like when you go to Comic-Con or an event like that, and you want to see every single thing. If you miss anything, oh, I didn't see everything. But now, if I were to go, I would just take my time, and if I end up just talking and eating, then so what? It's just one day. There would be other days to do things. But other people at events, they seem to be in a rush to say everything they want to say and do everything they want to do, and act a certain way. I guess it's sort of like when kids get sugared up and they're playing video games and they have this repetitive stimuli again and again and again, and it may lead to certain erratic behaviors, irritable behaviors. I see a lot of irritable people at protest events when they yell at each other. Yeah, so I do definitely acknowledge that there are people on our side like that. Absolutely. Sorry, that didn't even know that I was taking a turn, or I just.
Yeah, so it was your turn. You were speaking to Shane. If Shane reflects back,
Okay.
what you heard, you want to say?
From what I heard you saying is that you like to be more a little laid back and have nice discussions and just be there showing your support, whereas there's other people who like to get into the arguments and kind of yell at each other and instigate conflict, whereas you just want to be more laid back and cool and calm about it and do your own thing without too much conflict or chaos breaking out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I feel her.
Okay, so you felt heard. You can select now, Shane.
There's a specific topic or thing?
Whatever is alive for you.
Can I throw out a question?
Okay.
Because I'm really curious, to hear this from Mawani especially, but it would probably make sense for us to all answer of what you liked most about your candidate. Is that too controversial?
What I liked the most about my candidate, Donald Trump, is that throughout 2016, as I watched his speeches and I watched certain news reports like InfoWars and others, and engaging in discussion with other people, every now and then I see certain issues, certain specific topics, and I get more of a sense that our side is making sense compared to not so. Basically, there's an overall effort to better the country in terms of policies, our security, the economy, and taking care of our citizens. We want to take care of other people too, but we're at a time where we got to go with citizens first, that sort of thing. And there are certain courses of action that our president wants to take us in that may not have that immediate kind of feel good or safety kind of a comfort, but over the long run, it'll lead to a better outcome for the. I get a better sense of the big picture for the next 30 or the next 50 years from our side, whereas from the other side, the messages seem more scattered or immediate rather than thinking long term. That's one of the things that I get from our president.
So I hear that it sounds like you agreed with Trump on sort of a variety of issues: economy, national security, stronger borders, I think. I understood that correctly. And so you felt like Trump you agreed more with his long-term plan, or you felt like he had a longer-term plan over the coming decades versus just dealing with immediate issues?
Yeah, that's that's part of it, and I do feel hurt.
Okay, I'll just say that within doing the empathy circle process, we have a flow of who speaks, who listens, and there's sort of a structure that creates a kind of a set of rules, basically. So when we jumped from Shane to you, Jessica, which was everybody said it was okay, we sort of jumped out of that.
Yeah, it should be Shane's turn now.
Yeah, so it should be right. So it's just, well, I want to say that this is a basic structure that what I'm trying to promote is this empathic listening structure. I'm
on board. I really am.
Yeah, I know. I'm using this as a teaching moment, right? So the idea is that if we have this structure that after a while we let go of the structure, right? But then things can get heated, and we can say, okay, let's go back to our original structure as sort of like a fallback position. So if we get really good at practicing this, as I've just seen in like mediation, you've always got this as a fallback position that, okay, one person speaks, one person listens, and we go back to that. So I'm glad this happened, so we have a chance to kind of to articulate and share that. So, but we'll go back to Shane then.
So the question was candidate, correct? Or
I mean, if you want.
Yeah.
And
you select who you want to speak to as well. Remember.
Just to, I guess I'll go Jessica again since she's the one who raised the question. I originally started out supporting Bernie, and that just came from just kind of a heavy cynicism at the candidates I initially thought were going to run. And for me, the number one issue that really concerns me is how they're going to address climate change and the environment. Just because that's something I'm always concerned about, the kind of just the planet my cousins are going to have to live on in the future when we're gone or left in the coming years, in the coming decades. And Bernie really addressed that issue, and he originally was an independent, and he had a history of just speaking out against things like just economic corruption, speaking out against the fossil fuel industry, and it really felt like he was genuinely concerned about the environment, about climate change, and saw the threat it posed. And that was really important to me, was that how passionately he felt about it, because I felt a lot of candidates, even if they do care about it, it's not their top concern, and it's not even on a list of their priorities. And even though people like Hillary spoke about it, I just felt she also had other interests that conflicted with her tackling that issue. And also, Bernie was a student activist back in the 60s. And as someone who also is a student and organizes and takes time out of their study schedule to participate in stuff like this, that really spoke a lot to me, was that he's not just saying the things he is for political points or for credit, but he's been stood by his beliefs for decades now. And when I went to one of his rallies in 2015 and was organizing with him, it really spoke volumes to me, the diversity of the crowds I saw. How people from ages 4 to 90 were showing up across all financial demographics, across minorities and different communities that were coming out to hear him speak. And that really spoke volumes to me, was that can stand with this guy's message, and it's all speaking, and he's speaking to them. And he didn't take any money from big donors. It was all grassroots raised. It was all $10, $20 donations, and he still had one of the largest. He still was one of the people to raise the most money without big donors. But really, it was just, I felt like he actually gave a crap about the things he was saying. He wasn't doing it for political points. He had invested decades of his life into speaking out for what he believed in. And that's really just what kind of drew me to him, as someone who's heavily cynical of people's intentions, of politicians' intentions. It really felt like he genuinely cared. And he didn't want to run. It was just because he got popular online and people were like, yo, you have a good message. You should go out and speak to that. And people who were with him at the very beginning said he didn't want to run for president. It was just his ideas snowballed into his candidacy.
Okay, I have to pause you so I don't forget everything you already said. So one thing that was big for you were our environmental concerns. So that's something you care a lot about in general, and particularly with climate change. So you felt like the environment was a bigger priority for Sanders than it was for Clinton. You felt like sort of his money is where his mouth is, that he was a student activist just like you, which really indicated sincerity and commitment to you. You liked the diversity of his crowds and of the people who were willing to campaign for him. You felt like he sort of wasn't bought and sold. You felt like he actually really cared about the issues. And it sounds like you felt like he was genuinely sort of a departure from the normal political system where there might be special interests and big donors and things like that. You felt like he was sort of in it for the right reasons. So you're always cynical of people's motivations, but you felt like his were genuine. You didn't feel like he sought out the presidency and sought out the power and the fame and things. You felt like he was really encouraged by his fan base to run based on his ideas, and that was a really strong recommending factor.
Looks like we lost him again.
Darn it.
Back.
Okay.
Oh.
Hi.
Yeah, you were talking about Bernie being an activist and his crowds were diverse, and yeah.
So just assume everything I said was perfect. Go on.
So did you feel heard?
Yes, I did.
Okay.
Partially, but yes.
Do you know what is causing the disconnection? What's
I don't know if I'm in a bad part of the house but yeah.
Oh, okay. Okay. Should we do one more, Jessica, if you want to speak, and then I think we'll bring it to a close.
Sure. So I also supported Sanders in the primary.
And who are you speaking to?
Oh, Karen. So I also supported Sanders in the primary and Clinton in the general. And I actually liked both. I'm super politically knowledgeable, but I actually voted Clinton over Obama in that primary. So I liked a woman president in general. But I never really thought about it because it was very clearly anybody but Trump for me, to be honest.
Oh, right. I'm reflecting. Sorry. So you supported Sanders in the primary and then switched to Clinton in the general. And it sounds like a very easy decision for you. You didn't actually have to think about it very much. Partly you wanted a woman president, but you also just felt anybody but Trump was the way to go.
Absolutely. So, I mean, I liked Clinton sort of for a long time. I liked Sanders even more. But yeah, I think I can most honestly explain my vote by saying I was sort of personally disgusted by Trump. I was and am disgusted by his relationships with women, by the way he talks about women, by his business dealings. I feel like he has stolen from people throughout his business career, sort of been dishonorable, and that stuff was big for me. I was raised Quaker, and the Quaker sort of thing was always honesty in business. Back when sort of what you had was your word. I think the reason we succeeded and thrived was we did what we said. That was always the sort of hallmark of early Quaker business people. So I felt like my deepest values, like consent and honesty and integrity and being good to your partner, being good to your spouse, I never in a million years could have voted for Trump.
So, if you're honest, Trump was really the most important factor in your vote. Under no circumstances could you vote for him. And in a lot of ways, this goes back to your upbringing as a Quaker and your values. Your values are honesty and integrity and respect. And you felt that the evidence of his deceitful business practices and the way he treated his spouse and our spouses, his general attitude and treatment toward women, you found disgusting, and you couldn't support someone like that.
That's exactly right. And so I think primary for me was that sort of gut reaction, emotional stuff. As far as issues, I didn't feel like there was much there. As I mentioned before, my boyfriend is a Border Patrol agent, and I didn't see a lot of support from the Border Patrol community that the wall was the way to go, even for those who did want stronger borders. If you talk to most agents, what they'll tell you is people will get under, over, and through, especially in unmonitored areas. So even sort of aside from me generally being pro-immigration, I do understand that it should be legal and documented and regulated wherever possible for security reasons. So I'm not sort of one of those liberals who thinks we should throw open the borders, but I thought, the wall was a big selling point, and it didn't sell me at all. So that was sort of one policy issue. Another was kind of coal jobs. So I understand that in these kind of like small town mining communities, the idea was that he would revitalize and bring jobs back, and I didn't see evidence for that. I thought, him putting on a helmet and grabbing a coal shovel and saying, "We're going to get you back to the mines," like, to me, that's not a policy. And I didn't really see it as a solution. So I found something like bringing clean energy jobs to the same communities, which is what Clinton talked about, far more compelling on that issue too.
So even though despite the values issues being most important, there were also policy issues where you differed from Trump. One of those being the wall, and that's your disagreement with him there stems from a lot of your personal knowledge about how border patrols work and what works and what doesn't. And then another issue where you didn't find Trump convincing was coal and bringing back coal jobs. And you thought that even though he said he was going to bring back coal jobs, he didn't actually have any policy for doing so, in contrast to Hillary Clinton, who proposed clean energy as a replacement.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm out of time, probably.
Yeah, it was 5 minutes. Okay, so I think this is a good time to close since we've gone for about 2 hours, and we could keep going with this. Now we're kind of getting into more of the political left-right kind of issues here. So I do want to keep these empathy circles going, and thanks everybody for taking part. We're kind of developing this process now. I've done one full circle, so this is the second one. Doing the left and right, and we still have a lot of bugs to kind of work out here. Some of the things that I'm thinking about is maybe starting with a one-to-one listening to begin with. So if we have a circle, that I would listen to each person individually and do just a model listening, what we call a pre-circle. So you'd get 20 minutes, 30 minutes just by yourself to be heard. And we could record that as well. We do that for both sides or all sides. And then I'm also thinking that it's kind of scaling up in terms of the next step would just to bring two people together. And Guinevere, how do you pronounce your name? I always, Iwani, I'm always mispronouncing it.
My name is Iwani. The other person, her name is basically Genevieve, but
Genevieve.
She prefers it pronounced as Genevieve.
Oh, Genevieve. So Genevieve actually mentioned that she couldn't make it. She did apologize for it.
Okay.
And she said that maybe just having two people to start with, like one from the left or on the right, and kind of just having two people do a dialogue would be another thing.
Okay.
So we're really looking at how to develop this process. This is really good as a prototype. So we're kind of testing this out. And I'm also seeing more maybe a training video that if everyone takes part in watching this video to become familiar with the process, the reason we're doing each step, each part, why we do the reflection, why do we have the time limit, and so forth. And so these are all kind of ideas. I don't know if anyone else has some ideas. You can send those to me or just throw out. But I do want to keep this going, and maybe with the SMART group too. I think there's like 5,000 people or 6,000 people on that group, and I've seen some other groups that we can tap into, and keep this dialogue going, and keep developing the process so the container gets stronger. And also, kind of checking kind of the technical issues. I see that as a bit of a, with the dropouts, or I'm having a little problem with video, a lot of lag and so forth. So maybe using a different platform like Zoom or something. So those are all ideas that have come out of this one. So so maybe we just do a quick 1-minute closing. If you have kind of a closing comment.
I think Shannon is frozen again. Yeah, or
maybe he'll come back in a.
We can hear you.
Oh, are you back, Shannon? Okay. Okay. So a closing, maybe a 1-minute closing comment.
I don't know. It's just I like that this whole thing of bringing people together, where it's like. It's even the progressives, we have our own different ideas and thinking, and and I like hearing where everyone else is coming from. I want to thank Iwani for coming into this, just because I understand how it must be a little just even challenging or awkward coming into a space with people who may not
one versus three. I don't think I'd do it.
See things in the same light as you, but I like that we can address like our disagreements or our issues with whether it be our own people on our own side of the spectrum, or addressing just even things like whatever Trump's doing, or whatever we as people who are involved in this on the ground are doing, and our thoughts, and being able to share our experiences, because I feel it's important. And also just for all the discussion we have about what's going on in the bigger scope of things with Trump, with the candidacy, with different political perspectives and policies, it's nice to be able to sit down and see what's going on in with each of our minds and how we're perceiving things.
It is nice. I agree with that. Absolutely. It's even if there are disagreements that people feel bitter about, it's just out in events and such. It's still better without the yelling, the shoving, and sometimes fights break out. But
Yeah,
without that, then I mean, then they save themselves being arrested, being hurt, and, stuff like that.
Yeah.
It's I don't know. I guess for some people, it's hard for some people to disagree and just walk away or just say, okay, well, I understand, or that sort of thing. But I don't know. Maybe 15 years ago, I would have been more the yelling type, but it's there's certain things that kind of changed that in me. It's certain things like for one thing, for the past, yeah, I'm kind of going on and on. Sorry, this is supposed to be closing comments, but yeah, I'll just leave it at that.
Okay. Jessica, would you like to go?
Sure. Yeah, I really enjoyed it. I think I would have been terrified to do a circle with 3 conservatives and 2 conservatives and moderators. I have so much respect for you. I'd love to do it again. I think actually talking about stuff is much better than screaming into your echo chamber. So I'm all for it.
Karen?
Speaking of echoes, I'm going to echo Jess and say I really enjoyed it and would be up for doing it again. I would like to spend more time talking with conservatives in these groups. So whatever we can do to get Trump supporters to participate, I think would be great.
Okay, well, great. Well, with that, we will close the circle, and I keep in dialogue via email about setting up the next one, and I'm looking forward to it. I really, really enjoy it, and I've really been finding my world opening up more by having these dialogues, and it's a really good feeling. So, so thank you for this.
Thank you, Edwin.
Thanks,